Good evening. Good evening. Is this welcome? Okay, good.
You have to be that far from it.
That's right. I will lean in. Hi, welcome to the first Monday night seminar of 2014. We're really thrilled tonight to have two wonderful friends of the lab, wonderful birders, and wonderful speakers, Michael O'Brien and Louise Midas, and our own Chris Wood and Jesse Berry are going to give the formal introduction for them and tell a couple stories, I think, before we get started. My name is Sean Scanlon. I'm the Senior Director for Development here, so thank you for all of you for coming out tonight and for supporting the lab, and hope you really enjoy this. I'll just add my one mini story before I bring up Chris and Jesse. I was lucky enough to meet Michael and Louise on a trip that I went down with the lab 5 years ago next month. And I knew it was really somebody to pay attention to in the birding world when we were on a cruise with some lab supporters around Baja, Mexico, and we were on the deck of the ship looking at gulls flying by, and I always knew that John Fitzpatrick was kind of the pinnacle of birding, and always followed what Fitz says about birds. And I saw Fitz like asking somebody for tips on gulls, and I thought, who is that? And then this guy started quizzing Fitz on it, like, what's that? What's that? And they were coming up with all these formulas, these crossbreeds between this thing and this gull and that thing. And I had been only birding for about 9 months at that point. I had no idea what was going on. But at that moment, I realized that Michael is a real superstar in the birding world, and I should pay attention to that. And so we're really lucky to have Michael here. And then a few years ago, I took a trip with our Golden Wing Society down to Cape May, and Louise led us on a wonderful tour all around Cape May and Bombay Hook in Delaware, and I learned an immense amount from Louise. And in fact, I learned enough to teach a person from Denmark how to find an upland sandpiper, which was a real highlight in my birding career, I'll tell you that too. And it was only because Louise had just pointed it out a few minutes before, and I was straggling behind the group, and I knew where the sandpiper was. And then these Europeans ambled up behind me, and they started speaking in a language I didn't understand, and I just put the scope on it, and they were very excited, and it was all because of Louise. So I've already learned a lot, and I'm really glad they're here to share a lot of good stories. And this is definitely true. They'll definitely tell you the best way to have a great time in the field. But with that, with a formal introduction of all the great things that Michael and Louise do, let me invite Chris Wood and Jesse Berry to introduce them. Chris?
I guess this evening I'm going to fill in for both Chris Wood, myself, and Jesse Berry. Michael and Louise, I first met Michael and Louise. Well, I first heard of Michael and Louise. They are pillars in the birding community, both for their knowledge and also just how open they are and accessible. But when I was, in college, I was sort of nervous and dorky, and some things don't change. And I was really intimidated by them, and I thought, well, I was going there to do this World Series of birding. It was sort of one of the first big days, something that we pride ourselves on here, and I didn't know how I was going to possibly go up to Michael and Louise, these pillars in the birding community. But we had this mutual friend, Tony Luckring, and this is right about the time when cell phones just sort of first came out. They were still sort of a novelty. And I called Tony on my cell phone, and I said, Tony, how do I get to Michael and Louise's house in Cape May? And he navigated me there. Of course, I was not driving and talking on the phone at the same time. And I made it there, and I went up to Louise, who I'd never met, and said, Louise, I have a phone call for you. I handed her the phone, and Tony Luckring was gracious enough to introduce me to Louise and eventually to Michael O'Brien over the phone. And it's been I never would have imagined that, 15, 16 years ago, we would have had the friendship that we have. Louise has been an inspiration, as has Michael, both for me and for Jesse. Nobody has done more to instill a passion for birds and young birders and to continue that passion than Michael and Louise. They I won't say single-handedly, but they have had huge efforts both through the American Birding Association and in cooperation with Leica to really be mentors to huge numbers of students, many of whom are in this room today. And you guys are one of the main reasons that I know Jesse and myself have pursued our passion in birds instead of going and becoming economists or something like that. So on a very personal level, we owe you our thanks and appreciation, and I know that we speak for so many other people. The other thing that I think is so amazing that Sean really spoke to is how approachable they are. And Michael and Louise both, but Michael in particular there's nobody who knows more about birds in North America than Michael. And to be able to just email and talk to him and about the most minute details, and to be considered a peer and be working on a project now with Michael is an honor that I think I would have never dreamed of. And to be able to work with Louise on a lot of young birders programs is just a great honor for me. And I think as you listen to them this evening, you're going to see just how fun they are, just how much they know and how much they like to share. So thank you all for being here tonight, and with no further ado, here, Michael and Louise.
Well, thank you very much, Chris and Jesse and Sean. Great to be here tonight. It's a real honor to be out here. Louise.
Well, I'd like to thank you as well, and I'd like to have Michael start the program this evening, and we're really happy to be here.
So we've had the privilege to travel to a lot of places. We lead birding tours, and we get to go to some really amazing places. But even when we're right around home, or not such far-flung exotic places, we've noticed that there's always something interesting to see, and we want to share with you tonight some of our top 10, if you will, ways to never really have a slow day in the field. So the first one is always wear proper gear. Now it may seem obvious, but if you're not comfortable, you're not going to be able to focus on being in the field. If it's hot outside, you're going to need to wear a hat, cool clothing. There's Louise wearing her nice cool clothing on a river in Honduras. You guys up here in Ithaca, you're probably familiar with wearing cold weather gear when it's cold. Do you see ptarmigans here? Maybe not in Ithaca, but yeah, there's some white-tailed ptarmigans. So if you're going somewhere, like say you're looking for white-tailed ptarmigans up on the top of a mountain in the Rockies, you need to dress appropriately. Or if maybe there's a storm coming and you're hoping to see some rare seabirds, and it's raining, you got to get that right rain gear. Like here's a bunch of us in Cape May when a storm comes through, hoping for something crazy, like maybe a white-tailed tropic bird to fly by.
I missed that bird.
Louise missed that bird, but you've seen lots of others. Or maybe if you're doing the World Series of Birding, then Louise and I participate in the World Series of Birding on bicycle, and you never know what weather you're going to get. On this particular day, there's our World Series team, minus Louise, who took the picture. This past World Series of Birding, we had quite a bit of rain, so it was good to be dressed appropriately. Yeah, and maybe sometimes you're going to be in a place where there's a lot of bugs, and you might want a head net. Or maybe if you're butterflying, you need to wear just the right hat to attract butterflies. It's good to have squirrel-proof shoes, because that can be a problem. And if you're a hawk watcher, you need to wear exactly the right gear. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to spot those hawks. This is our friend Tom Reed on the Cape May Hawk Watch. Actually, that may have been Halloween. I can't remember.
Always watch the weather. And Well, if you're in a migration area, you are totally in tune with the weather. I remember at one point I tried to save money and didn't have the Weather Channel, and that didn't last for very long. You don't want to miss any birds. And this is a picture of a cold front coming, which means there are lots of things coming with cold front. The surfers on the leading edge of the cold front could be insects such as the dragonflies. Here's a common green darner. And then you could have lots of common green darners. Here's some saddlebags. This is a combination of both the black and Carolina saddlebags. And then following the dragonflies, you have birds who eat the dragonflies. This is a kestrel packing lunch. And on some occasions, you can witness huge migrations of other critters. Here's a leafhopper. Michael witnessed this one morning from the Higbee. There were thousands, right? Just
Millions.
millions. Okay,
Millions.
gotta get that right. Millions of these broad-headed sharpshooters. And as the cold front passes, then you have the thermal activity and the hawks coming through. Here's a sharp-shinned hawk going through the dunes. And of course, the classic shot of the broad-winged hawks circling above. Cold fronts also bring birds. Here's our namesake where we're from, the Cape May warbler. And other warblers as well. Here's black-throated blue and bay-breasted warbler. And when we do the counts, we have something called a flicker clicker, because there are lots of other birds that migrate through. The bobolinks on the mornings, you'll see actually turning their noses back into the wind after getting pressed offshore with the cold front, and they backtrack to land. And these are bobolinks which are en route to Argentina. Here's a yellow-rumped warbler. And some more insect activity here. There's some monarchs. And I know their numbers have been declining. I know that firsthand because I've been studying monarchs for 22 years. And they've had a bit of a go of it these days due to various things. But if you're lucky, you can still witness the migration of the monarchs. And even in between the cold fronts, you can witness the insects that come up from the south. This is a long-tailed skipper that usually lives in the southern region and has been pressed to the north. Sleepy orange. Ocola skipper. Clouded skipper, just to name a few.
So our next category is to pay attention to behavior. Now I know most birders are familiar with using behavior as a useful field mark. Like for example, these if you see an egret, some dark egret running around and flapping its wings around, you don't need a really good look at it to know that that's a reddish egret. Or if you're looking at vultures, maybe you'll notice black and turkey vultures. I know you don't get too many black vultures here, maybe one, right? But they fly differently. They have, the turkey vulture holds its wings up in a V. The black vulture has them a little flatter. The turkey vulture has a slower wing beat. The black vulture a little quicker. And there's a parallel in the butterfly world. The viceroy compared to the monarch, they look similar, but the viceroy has a flatter winged glide and a faster wing beat than the monarch. So these things are useful for identification. Behavior is useful for identification, but behavior can also be just kind of really cool to watch. So not only here in this case Wilson's phalaropes, not only is that behavior distinctive, that spinning around, but also it's just really cool to watch. It's interesting too. You can learn something about what those birds are doing. They're sort of drawing nutrients up from the water below, and that's how they're feeding. Anybody ever watch an Ipswich sparrow feeding? They'll sometimes, if the seeds are a little bit high, they'll have to jump up and sort of almost hover glean to try to grab some seeds. So it's kind of fun to watch that. Even ordinary birds, like these are gadwalls. If you watch them a little bit, pay close attention, you can kind of see some interesting behaviors, like when they're courting. This gang of males will go around a female and make all these postures and calls and just try to impress that female. And you might not, it's not that obvious. So, but if you pay close attention, you'll notice some interesting things. And you can see some pretty amazing dramas unfold in front of you if you just have the patience to sit there and watch. In this case, this was in Cape May. There was a parasitic jaeger sitting on the beach. And we don't see that many parasitic jaegers on the beach. We see them flying offshore, but this one decided to sit down on the beach. And the local fish crows, who don't know parasitic jaegers very well, they kind of were interested and curious. And they were watching from a distance, and eventually they came in and were kind of trying to size up, I think, this jaeger. And they just kind of got a little closer and a little closer and a little closer, and they're just sort of testing the waters. They started picking at it, and the jaeger didn't like that very much, and eventually the crows flew off. But it was interesting to really see these birds that clearly didn't know each other just trying to size each other up. And you can see some really heartwarming dramas unfold if you really watch. These are some Galapagos sea lions, and this was a pup sea lion had been separated from its mother, and it came back from the ocean and into onto the beach, and it was calling and calling and calling and looking for its mother. It actually went up to the wrong adult female and got snipped at, and it was wailing and crying and eventually found the right mother, and it was really, really sweet to see them reunited. And then there's some other not quite so friendly dramas, like a great frigate bird chasing this red-footed booby. And you can see some amazing battles, like these greater prairie chickens, just these two rival males battling it out. Or these green anoles, just two males just battling it out. You might not really notice it unless you really pay attention, but these things are just, this is a real rivalry, and they're just working out their territories. Or maybe you can see just this really cool courtship behavior between a pair of roseate terns. And you might not even really notice what's happening until you just sit there and focus on it and watch it for a little bit. So seeing some of these behaviors, you just need patience and just focus on it a little bit. Or maybe you'll see a praying mantis being kind of sneaky and grabbing a monarch.
Don't ignore the little things. Ever since I was a child, I've been intrigued by nature in general and became a birder later on. But some of my first memories were like looking into a pond and marveling at a water strider. And another amazing thing is watching a moth grabbing onto the glass on the side. This actually happens to be at Canopy Tower in Panama. I have no idea how that slug moth held onto the glass. Or noticing that there are very small butterflies. This is a western pygmy blue, which is less than 1/2 inch, the smallest butterfly in North America. Or going on a bird walk in the fall and realizing that when there is not a cold front, you don't have too many birds. And finding a very small spring peeper and making that the highlight of the trip. Actually, anyone ever hear a spring peeper? They're really loud. This teeny little guy, which is 1.5 inches, 2 inches, is louder than anything else. and noticing on a walk on the beach that there are little beetles that fly at your feet and ahead of you. And turns out they're amazing predators. They eat anything smaller than them, particularly ants. This is a bronze tiger beetle. There are over 2,000 species of tiger beetles in the world, and many of them are absolutely gorgeous. And this is on a pelagic trip off of North Carolina. They'd been birding in the morning and decided to put out a dip net to check out the sargasso weed, and they found this, a sargassum frogfish. Pretty well camouflaged, isn't it? Or I was doing a butterfly demonstration one day and showing people the monarch butterflies, and a little kid goes, "What's this?" And we looked at it. It looked like some sort of creature. Turns out it was a butterfly caterpillar, one I'd never seen before, but I'd seen the adult. Beautiful. Juniper hairstreak. Actually, it does use juniper as its host plant, and that caterpillar looks an awful lot like juniper. Or just taking a walk and finding a four-leaf clover, which
Now hold on.
I
there.
knew he was going to do that.
Okay, so I've known Louise for, how long have I known you?
A long time.
A long time. So in all those years, we take walks together. We lead birding tours together. We do, so we've been out in the field a lot together. And in that time, I have found maybe 4 or 5 four-leaf clovers. Louise has found literally hundreds. I have no idea how she does that. I'm pretty sure it's magic, but she hasn't explained it to me, so I can't explain it.
No, I don't make money at it, that's for sure. This is really cool. My nephew lives in Brooklyn, and he plays video games a lot. But his summer assignment was to take a 3-foot square, which I happen to have from doing horseshoe crab surveys, and put it in a spot and survey that for 1 hour. He sat there for that hour and counted out all the insects that he could find in that square. And from that, he created a graph and a bar chart, and it was a great math assignment in addition to a science assignment. And anybody want to guess what the most common insect in there was? Ants. Yeah, everybody. Yep, ants. And then second was pillbug. Pillbug, roly-poly woodlouse, the little things that roll up into balls when you touch them. Oh, here is, we've decided to call this phone a looping. Just me thought digiscoping was it. Dick Walton here has really gotten into spiders these days, and of course some kids never grow up. These guys were looking at a spider through a loop and taking pictures. Here's an example. One looks like close up. It's a jumping spider, and jumping spiders are so cool. When they jump, they put out like a bungee cord behind them that grabs them, or they can hold on when they grab their prey. Oh, Dick gave us some video to show you. I think they call this one Sassy Pants. And here's another jumping spider. This one was particularly lucky. It got a big caterpillar. And then there are the bigger spiders. Actually, it's not as big as it looks here, but this is one you see when you're down in Florida, the golden silk orb weaver.
So our next category is ask questions. The more you're out in the field, the more you may just get curious about why what you're looking at is doing what it's doing, or maybe why it's named what it's named. In this case, this is a butterfly called a question mark. Does anyone know how the question mark got its name? Well, it's got a little question mark on its wing, sort of, I guess. It's, If you look at the little white marks on the wing, there's a little arc and a dot. I guess that's sort of like a question mark. There's a very closely related species that doesn't have that white dot. Anyone know what that one's called? The comma. Yeah, of course. Okay, so you're all butterfliers.
But that one looks like a dead leaf when it's on it.
They do. They're camouflage. Yeah, that dead
I've
leaf
seen one lying
camouflage
around
pattern.
the
That's how they that's how they hide out.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll be out in the field sometime and you'll see warblers in an oak tree, in this flowering oak tree, and think, well, why is that? Because those flowers are attracting insects, and the insects attract the warblers. So if you're looking for warblers in the springtime, maybe you want to just look for those flowering trees. Just figure out what tree is flowering. Maybe it'll be the oak trees, maybe it'll be the cherries, but just pay attention to which one's flowering. Maybe you'll find those warblers. Or maybe you're looking at, what is that red-faced warbler eating? If you happen to be in southeast Arizona and looking at a red-faced warbler. In this case, it's on the box elder, there were all these little aphids. So on that day, if you keyed in on the box elder, you were going to find red-faced warblers. Or maybe you might see this ovenbird and think, well, usually when I see ovenbirds, they have more of a tail than that. This one, how did it only has one tail feather. So how did it lose its tail feather? Well, this is a bird on the dry tortugas in the springtime. And migration is a pretty risky thing, especially when you fly out over the water. So my guess is it had a close encounter with a merlin or something like that, lost one of those tail feathers. Or maybe you might see an orange-crowned warbler hopping around in the snow, and then you see it's got some tiny little thing in its beak. So what the heck is it finding to eat out here in the snow? Well, it looks like it found some tiny little pupa of something, hiding out in those reeds. Or maybe it's a good winter for snowy owls. Like, for example, this winter. And you think, well, why is this snowy owl out on a jetty? So this one was in Cape May. And over the last couple of months in Cape May, snowy owls have been documented to eat gulls, ducks, and shorebirds. And all these things can be found near jetties, so maybe that's a good foraging area for a snowy owl. It's also probably kind of protected. Not that many predators out there. Or maybe you'll sort of wonder about how birds don't always look the same at different times of year. You know how sometimes you'll see a bird flying around and its wings look kind of ragged? Like in this case, this is a herring gull, and it's molting. It's got this ragged look to its wings. Well, you ever notice that geese, do you ever see a goose flying around with ragged looking wings? No. Why is that? Well, because it turns out that waterfowl, they drop all of those flight feathers at the same time. They go flightless for a month or so, and so you don't see them flying around without those full flight feathers. And in fact, they kind of hide out, which is kind of amazing if you think about how can a goose really hide out, but they manage during that flightless period. Or maybe you'll be looking at a couple piping plovers on the beach, maybe you're in Florida or something, and think, well, are those both piping plovers? Do those look the same to you? How are they different? Yeah, one's a little lighter, one's a little darker. Well, it turns out those are two different subspecies. The one, I don't know if you can see, that one on the left actually has leg bands. That was banded in Michigan. So the ones that nest up in inland are a little bit darker, and the ones that nest out in the coast are a little bit lighter. And maybe sometimes you'll be looking at a bird and saying, am I really sure that I know what that is? Anybody know? Well, shoot, is there a name? Oh, there's no name there.
You took it away.
Anybody know what this is? some kind of a hummingbird. Well, there's two kinds of hummingbirds with all this, lots of orange on the tail, the Rufous hummingbird and the Allen's hummingbird. And they are really, really, really hard to tell apart unless you get the perfect look at the tail. And you see those, well, there's those two kind of greenish looking feathers in the middle of the tail, and next to those, the ones that have black tips but no white. Okay, so that's the second from, what is it, R2? Well, anyway, it's that little feather. You see it's got a little bump along the edge near the tip. Well, that's what tells you that it's a Rufous hummingbird and not an Allen's hummingbird. And maybe you're looking at a howler monkey. You're in the tropics and you're looking at a howler monkey and you're wondering, what is that animal thinking? And there's some questions that you're just never going to get the answer to.
Appreciate subtle beauty. And this is a juvenile mourning dove, and its cryptic pattern there with the pale tips on the feathers is exquisite. And here's a checkered white on Queen Anne's lace. A black waved flannel moth. Hard to believe that the caterpillar of this could sting you. Nelson's sparrow with its earth tones in the marsh. And here's an Antillean nighthawk, another one that's very cryptically patterned. Periodical cicadas. We had large number of them down near us this year. It was unbelievable. Northern pearlii. This is a butterfly that hangs out in the forest. Speaking of the forest, this is a helmeted iguana. We found this one in Honduras at night. It's an arboreal species of iguana that in the daytime it'll be up in the canopy, and at night it roosts or hangs out on sticks. We are lucky to find this one. Whimbrel. It's a cold hermit thrush. Here's one of Michael's favorites, the Lincoln sparrow. Dragonfly here. This one's called a Halloween pennant. And here's one of our favorites, yellow-rumped warbler. And this is a tropical species of butterfly called a mangrove skipper. And yes, it does live in the mangroves. A fiery skipper. And we shouldn't forget about the species that are common. Take a look at them. Even this poor little house sparrow doesn't get any respect. But it is a young male, and you take a look at it, you can see the dark feathers coming in underneath, and actually they would wear to expose the darkness, but it is really quite beautiful. Or you could just call it a Burger Kinglet.
Appreciate birds as individuals. I know a lot of times when we go out birding, we tend to focus on how many species we've seen. But it's good sometimes to really just look at an individual bird and kind of think about what that bird goes through during its life. What it has to do to survive. This is, I would like to call this our mockingbird. So this is the mockingbird that lives in our driveway, and he's sitting on his sumac, and he defends that sumac. And every time we walk out to the driveway to go to the car, I say hello to the mockingbird. I'd like to think he says hello to me. And he's sitting there, and I always watch him for just a few moments, just to see what he's up to. Sometimes he's just kind of hanging out, watching over the area. Sometimes there's going to be maybe a bunch of starlings around, and he's going nuts because the starlings are trying to steal his sumac, and that is not cool. So he's trying to defend that sumac against anything that's around. And he'll just sort of hang out there. Sometimes when it's really cold, and all the water's frozen, maybe I'll put out a little fresh hot water in the bird bath, and he always comes right in and gets a nice drink. So I'd like to think we're friends. This is our mockingbird. So when you're out in the field or in your backyard, and you see that robin or whatever you see every day, just think about what it's doing, what it has to deal with that day in order to survive. When you see a merlin fly by, kind of looking you in the eye, just think about, okay, where has it been that day? Where is it headed? What does it need in order to survive?
It's up to no good.
It's probably up to no good, but give it the benefit of the doubt. Or when you see, say you're in the dry Tortugas and you see this beautiful scarlet tanager hopping around the beach. Now that's not really typical scarlet tanager habitat. So this scarlet tanager has no doubt been on an incredible journey. It spent the winter way down in South America in the forest, and it flew thousands of miles to get to the dry Tortugas and managed to get there. It's hungry, it's looking for food, and it's not done yet. It still has to fly another long distance to get up to, maybe it's going to come up to New York somewhere to nest, or maybe it'll stop down in Kentucky or go up to Ontario. It's hard to know, but that bird is on quite a journey. So if you're seeing a bird like that, just think about where it's going, what it has to do. Or maybe you see a prairie warbler with a big mouthful of bugs. And you have to realize that bird is probably putting itself in harm's way, kind of being out in the open, because it's just trying to feed its kids. Anybody out here have kids? Probably a lot of you do. There's nothing more important than taking care of your kids, right? So that's all this bird is trying to do. So think about that when you're looking at a bird. Just think about what it has to deal with. And look at this little baby oyster catcher, just kind of looking at, just seeing the world for the first time, and you wonder what it's thinking. And the poor adult there is, just trying like crazy to keep it out of trouble. Or this little Adelie penguin, all he wants to do is get the next meal while the adult is trying to, teach it how to be a penguin. Well, this little guy, this is a rufous hummingbird that tried to spend the winter in Cape May this year, and when we had one of those hard cold snaps, suddenly it disappeared. So we were watching this bird, we were rooting for it, but this one I don't think made it. Other birds are a little hardier. Here's a tree sparrow, on a snowy day, just trying to find something to eat. And think about this monarch. This is which one? It's number PEM 997 is this monarch. I think that's its name. Will it make it to Mexico? Will it successfully overwinter? It's hard to know. Will this golden-winged warbler find a place to nest in the spring? When it gets to the breeding grounds. The more we think about birds as individuals, the more we'll care about them, and maybe if we care about them, then we're more likely to do something to try to help them, and I think that's an important thing to do.
Here's something we've done a lot of: hang out with kids. They're forever a source of inspiration. They're curious and they're infectious, and it's just positive to be with them. Of course, these guys aren't looking up, are they? They spend a lot of time looking down. In this particular instance, we found a really cool shorthorn lizard, and he found the book and told us so. And we chased grasshoppers around, blue-winged grasshopper here. This is in southeast Arizona. And this young birder actually spent a lot of time looking for insects. She's from Panama. Her father runs one of the lodges down there. And in this instance, she found a pleasing fungus beetle. Kids don't stop either. They go first thing in the morning, and I don't know when they eventually sleep, but when they're with us, when we're doing the camp. This is southeast Arizona at night. We drove around and flashing our lights and finding things. And in this particular instance, we found a really cool Mexican spadefoot. It's kind of a toad. Here they're looking down again. This is the next wave, I believe. Dragonflies. It's the red saddlebags. They knew all the scientific names too. It was pretty intimidating. And local bird clubs are great too for kids. Believe it or not, where we live, we don't have many young birders. And we're working on it. This is a group that was started by Richard Crossley's wife. And they were really getting the young birders in Cape May into it. And here they're out on one of the local pontoon boats checking out the birds. Here's a group of kids that came in from Philadelphia. It's actually the Philadelphia Zoo's program. It's called Zoo Champions for Restoring Endangered Wildlife. It's a great program that they have working with urban kids. And of course, any opportunity you have to teach kids is just wonderful. Can't go wrong with a monarch, actually. I love the hats. And here's some Michael using a teachable moment here of it's actually a dead Caspian tern, but he's using the tern to teach the kids what the different feathers are on the bird. And kids don't always follow directions. And they don't always do what you want them to. But gosh, it's wonderful to be with them. Always inspiring. And they do know how to have fun. And we shouldn't forget how to have fun.
Okay, this one's for you, Chris. I suspect I might be preaching to the choir here, but I'm a big fan of eBird. Anyone here ever hear of eBird? Okay. Well, if you haven't heard of eBird, it's this incredible online database of bird records, and you can submit your records and be part of this incredible big picture of bird abundance and distribution around the world. So really what that does for the birder is it makes every single outing useful. You may not think you're seeing that much, but if you're only, maybe you'll have a day when you see 200 species, or maybe you'll have a day when you only see 3 species. In either case, that's useful information. So it makes every single sighting useful. It's really easy to record the records in eBird, especially if you have a device you can record in the field on bird log, and it's a lot of fun to record birds right around home. If any of you are a little tentative about using eBird, I would encourage you to at least start right in your backyard. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is probably nobody else is going to do it. So you're the only one that's going to be submitting data from that one spot. So it's really important that somebody does it, and you're the obvious one. Not only that, but if you're maybe a little tentative about your identification skills, you're probably much more reliable right in your backyard than you are anywhere else. So definitely you want to eBird in your yard. If you're confident about eBirding, you should eBird everywhere you go. And you can come up with these little fun bar charts too. eBird gives back to you. So this is some of the birds from my yard, and it's always fun to kind of see what's what I've seen in certain time periods and what I'm missing, and it's like, darn it, I can't believe I don't have a chickadee record in the second week of April. I got to do something about it. I'm always away. Got to do something about that. And it keeps your lists for you, so you can keep track of what you've seen in each state or county or wherever you go birding. It'll keep your list for you. So eBird is a really incredible. It's an incredible tool for birders, and you're giving something to the ornithologists can use this data to learn a lot about bird abundance and distribution. So eBird is a wonderful thing. And if you want to learn more about eBird, just talk to Chris over there later.
And now everybody's seeing Michael's life list, actually, as what he's put into eBird.
That's my
so
eBird
far.
life list.
Yeah, he's got a lot to add to that. Enjoy the spectacle of abundance.
Is this Slaughter Beach?
Oh, Slaughter Beach.
Other side of the bay.
Other side of the bay. Yeah, this is a spectacle that if you ever have the opportunity to see, which I hope you do, it's on the Delaware Bay in the spring. It's the red knots. And it's a little bit of a sad story, unfortunately, because they're in precipitous decline right now because of they're connected with the horseshoe crabs, which are also declining. But on a good day, you can see many red knots and ruddy turnstones and sanderling and lots of laughing gulls. They're not going away. And here are the horseshoe crabs, which come up in the spring to spawn on the beach, particularly at the high tide, middle to the end of May. And here's what they're eating. The birds are eating these thousands of little horseshoe crab eggs, tiny little things, and it enables them to make the trip to the Arctic for breeding. They double their body weight, hang around about 2 weeks, and if they don't double their body weight and have the fat, they will not survive, or they're to be able to breed. Not far away, just a little bit inland, is the impoundments where you could see birds. And these are Dunlin and semi-palmated sandpipers utilizing the mud flats at a nearby dredge spoil. Or this is willets in the winter in the Florida Bay down in Florida at the very, very bottom in the Everglades. Thousands of western willets. Or the spring, you could see thousands of American avocets. This is Bolivar Peninsula, the Bolivar Flats, not too far from Galveston. Or you could go to the Galapagos and see piles of marine iguanas. If you're really lucky, you could get to Antarctica and see a colony of king penguins. And here are thousands of king penguins, and this is a year-round colony there, different ages of the penguins. This is Salisbury Plain in South Georgia. And this is the phenomena of puddling with butterflies. Male butterflies will gather where there's a puddle that has dried out, and they'll collect minerals or salts. Back to those monarchs again. Yes, here's a monarch migration where we had thousands of monarchs one morning all pick up at once and cross the Delaware Bay when the conditions were right after a cold front. The winds had changed. Nice close-up of monarchs always makes people happy. Morning flight. If you're ever in a migration location and you get to witness morning flight, it's a wonderful phenomena where you see the birds en masse, visible migration. They've been flying all night. They're going to put down for the day, but before then, they want to find suitable habitat. There's American robins. Going to have video here. Those little spots are birds. Actually, that group had quite a few expletives, but we left them out. This is one of our favorite spots on Cape May Point. You can also see the Delaware Bay there. Mostly robins, but there are other species in there as well. Another species that gathers in great mass is the tree swallow. These guys are on the beach. Some of the locals with pools up north of us, they have the pools in the dunes, complain about these birds because they poop in their pools. Not good. But we don't have a problem with that at all. Back to the Galapagos, these are wedge-rump storm petrels. An amazing phenomenon. Yeah, they do look like swallows. And they're actually short-eared owls that sit in the cracks where the storm petrels are going in, waiting to grab them, which is pretty, well, you can imagine how it looks. And just standing in it and being part of it is something that I wouldn't trade for anything. Whether it be birds, butterflies, or just a field of flowers. It's wonderful to be part of nature and to be a member of the community of people that enjoy being in nature. And I'd just like to thank you all for coming this evening. And we will field questions if anybody has any questions. And one last pretty picture here, of course.
Yeah, and also we'd especially like to thank Victor Emmanuel Nature Tours for
Enabling us.
sending us to some pretty amazing places to see some pretty amazing things. So thanks to them, and thanks to all of you for coming out tonight. It's been fun for us. Thanks. So questions, anybody?
There's one.
Where's the best, in your opinion, birding place to go late June in Cape May? Is there a best birding place
June.
in late June?
Oh.
The best place in late June in Cape May. That's a pretty specific question.
Returns.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the tern colonies at that time, in Cape May, there's the Cape May Meadows and and Stone Harbor Point. Both of those have, and also up in Ocean City, a little farther north, there's some pretty thriving tern colonies, and the level of activity there is just incredible. Then, the adults flying in and feeding little baby chicks, that can be really, really cool to see. Yeah.
We do our butterfly counts.
We do a lot of
Join us on a butterfly
we
count.
do a lot of butterfly counts right around then. End of June, beginning of July. That's a peak butterfly count season. So butterfly diversity is really good then. So there's a lot to do then. That's one of those really, as far as bird migration, that's right in an in between time. The shorebird migration is just starting at the very end of June. You might have the first few migrants showing up, but otherwise, the breeders are out there doing their thing, and the tern colonies are spectacular then.
Something
For those of you in the room here, we are streaming this online. We got about 350 visitors watching the presentation.
Oh, that's
Awesome.
nice.
Peru and
Wow.
Canada and many states around the country. One question for you, Michael and Louise, is what was your most unexpected experience in the field? And can you repeat the question in the microphone so they can hear?
Okay, so the question was, what was our most unexpected experience in the field? And Louise is going to answer first.
No, I'm thinking.
Wow.
Oh man, I need time to think.
You know, the only, you know,
The Jaguar.
that's really
The
hard.
Jaguar.
Well, okay, the Jaguar, she says. Yeah. Anytime you see something rare, I mean, that's always unexpected. So, you know, we've bumped into rarities at different times, and that's, you know, that's always really exciting and, of course, unexpected. Louise was mentioning a Jaguar. We spent a lot of time in Belize. And we had always heard that Chanchich Lodge was a really good place to see jaguars. We had never been there before. This was quite a few years ago. So we were making our first trip to Chanchich Lodge. We still had not been there yet. We actually drove. Usually you fly in there, but this time we drove because we were just kind of scouting the place. And we drive around the corner, and there's this jaguar in the road. And it's like, okay, I guess there are jaguars here.
I haven't seen one
We've been
since.
there quite a few times since I've not seen one. But even so, that was still amazing to see that thing right there in the middle of the road and just
He
wandering
just got
off.
up and walked away.
Okay, any other questions? Sean?
Another one from online. Can you speak more to what's causing the monarch decline?
I knew that would come.
All yours.
Well, I've been studying monarchs for over 22 years now as part of an ongoing censusing and tagging project. And it's, as expected, unfortunately, it has been in decline. The eastern population that we count here in Cape May has actually been holding steady, which makes you wonder about what's going on in the Central Flyway. And we probably know a lot about what's happening with the drought conditions there right now, but there's also the agricultural practices that are causing big problems as well. And it's not just Mexico, which there are problems in Mexico, which we know about. It's everywhere that the monarchs are having problems. And we look at the monarch as the canary in the coal mine. Most people, in fact, 99% of the people that I've talked to, and I've talked to thousands of people, about monarch butterflies know what they are. And they care about monarchs, not just because for natural history, but there's a spiritual thing about them, so you can really connect with them. And I think the plight of the monarch, and us following it, is going to be very important for everybody to watch and hopefully make change.
My 5-year-old granddaughter said to me yesterday that they probably just don't want to fly that far anymore.
Oh,
So that's why they're not
yes. Wow.
I'm
Even
not
a,
sure
even a
that's it,
5-year-old.
but
Yeah, well, they
That's
actually,
great.
Monarchs are being used as part of curriculum in schools now.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what they've been
studying
saying.
monarch butterflies. It's amazing.
And when I told her they're in decline and I'd
Yeah.
been reading about it on
Yeah.
online, she went, perhaps they don't want to fly that far anymore.
Yeah, it's a long way to go, thousands of miles, but this particular population, the eastern population, their intent is to go there. You know, that's what one of many things that we've learned about them, but there's a whole lot that we still don't know. And monarch is a bit of a symbol. We all know how many other creatures there are out there that have similar problems, but the monarch is the one that's being used as the symbol, the canary, so to speak.
They're in the garden.
Yeah.
My mother was visiting years ago, but she came back from, we've got a wooded area at the bottom of our yard, and she came back up and said, "You've got to come down quickly because there's something happening in the wood." And I hadn't seen it before because I was still new to the area. And the trees were just covered with orange butterflies.
Oh,
And
just
I
covered with
remember
monarchs. Yeah,
crying.
that is so
Yeah.
special when we see that. We see that occasionally in Cape May. That's just,
This was right up here, you know.
yeah, that's an
a mile
amazing
away.
sight.
Oh, there's a question.
Oh, yeah.
What do you use to do the eBird out in your backyard, a smartphone?
Yeah, well, I have an iPhone, and there's an app called Bird Log. Yeah, and works really well. I mean, you can go back inside and do it on your computer if you want, but Bird Log is really easy, and you just do it in the field, so it's really quick. Yeah. Oh,
It's made for somebody.
Well, there's somebody behind you first.
Okay, back there first.
We'll get you to.
The problem with the horseshoe crab, is that still because of the fishing industry? Using them for
Get
bait?
into politics, aren't we?
In part, the horseshoe crabs were depleted by overfishing. That's been pretty well documented. There's a moratorium in New Jersey on the harvest of horseshoe crabs, and we have seen a increase recently in both the numbers of horseshoe crabs and in the number of shorebirds. So just a little bit of an increase. It's going in the right direction. So that's good news. But there's still, the shorebird numbers are still pretty drastically low.
Over 90%,
for-
right?
For this, especially for the semi-palmated sandpiper and the red knot, are both over 90% declines. So they're really major concerns about them, but they are maybe inching back up in the right direction. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
My question is, I'm really interested in going to see the crane migration of the Platte River. How do you even organize a trip like that? I want to go by myself. I mean, are there groups
Oh, yeah.
that
Well, there's certainly, you can
There's a
find tour groups that go there. There's a crane festival, and so you can hook up with that and do the local field trips, or you can just book a hotel room and go out there. You can look on eBird and see when the peak time for the cranes is and the best locations, and just go.
I was just at Bosque. That was
So there's all kinds of options depending on what type of a trip you want. Anything else?
One last question from a person named Lab Director JWF,
Who the heck is that?
some guy. He's apologized for not coming, but he wanted to know what's your favorite place to bird outside of the U.S.
I have a real soft spot. Oh, sorry. The question was, what is our favorite place to go birding outside of the U.S.? And I know Louise may have a different answer, but I have a real soft spot for Belize. I've been going to Belize for many, many years, and it's just such a warm, friendly country, and it's a really nice mix of neotropical birds, species that we don't see at home, and if you go in the winter anyway, North American species that are spending the winter down there or maybe migrating through. So it's nice to see those birds in a different context. I really enjoy that. The things that I see in the summer in my backyard, I like to see what they're doing in the winter, and so seeing them down there is a lot of fun. So I just love Belize. So that would be my pick.
Of course, Belize is the first thing that popped into my head, but that was already taken. So I think when I go to the Galapagos and I go swimming with sea lions and they blow bubbles in my face, I can't help it. I fall for it every time. And sea turtles and penguins and stuff like that. It's pretty darn cool. So
Yeah,
other
that's a
than
good one
Belize.
too. Anything else? Well, again, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.